Back at Folkestone Harbour, the SS Deal is being loaded, and the change of motive power on the incline has become apparent. As a replacement for the ageing R1s, British Railways transferred a number of Western Region 57XX pannier tanks to take over banking duties on the branch in the late 1950s. One of these rolls down to the harbour. By April 1960, 7 of these locos were based at Folkestone Junction Shed to work both Folkestone Harbour and Dover. Anyone who remembers the pannier tanks in their heyday, or who has seen and heard them, will appreciate the spectacular sound as they barked their way up the 1 in 30 gradient towards Folkestone Junction. Two pannier tanks leave the harbour station with a train of 10 carriages and a van. The original harbour at Folkestone was built for the Admiralty at the time of the Napoleonic Wars by Thomas Telford. It was silted up and was virtually derelict when purchased for the South Eastern Railway in 1843. At first, sailings were subjected to tidal restrictions, but improvements to the harbour throughout the 19th century enabled it both to cope with the increasing size of steamers and also for it to be navigable at all phases of the tide. Between 1952 and 1960, the Golden Arrow returned to Folkestone Harbour for the outward journey. It left Victoria at 1 p.m, arriving at the harbour around 2:30. However, as the return service was via Dover, the empty stock had to be moved to there in time for the 4:58 p.m. departure for London. The Great Western Pannier Tank brings this typically southern train into Folkestone Harbour station. The luggage containers conveyed on the second vehicle are later seen being craned onto the ship, are identical to those observed in the 1930 sequence. As the steamer leaves for France, she passes the TSS Canterbury, tied up at the pier. This vessel, then the pride of the Southern Railway fleet, entered service on the 15th of March 1929. Before leaving Folkestone, there is the chance to revisit Sandling Junction, last seen in the 1930s. On this occasion, a short down goods hauled by N class 31867 is stopped for the driver to be advised on a cracked rail ahead and Sandling Tunnel. The same fate befells the Golden Arrow, headed by Battle of Britain Pacific 34089, 602 Squadron. With a characteristic slip, the Pacific gets her train underway. Our final scenes, featuring the Golden Arrow, one of the most famous trains on the Southern, are at Victoria and Paddock Wood, following the introduction of the BR Standard Pacifics. From 1951 to 1958, when the Britannias were transferred away from the southern region, the train was regularly entrusted to 2 members of the class, based at Stewards Lane Shed in London. The end of an era came on the 11th of June 1961, when this famous train was hauled by steam for the last time. West Country Class 34100 Appledore brings the down Golden Arrow slowly through Paddock Wood on that day. The Southern Railway and the Southern Region of British Railways were the biggest users of Pullmans in Britain. The crowds are out near Chipstead on the line to Tattenham Corner on the 6th of June 1953 to see the Royal Train, headed by Schools Class 440, 30915 Brighton, which was taking the Royal Party to see the Derby. The Royal Train is followed by the so-called Bookie's Bell, an all-Pullman train. The loco for this train is number 31822, the first of only 6 N1 Class 3-cylinder mobiles built by the South Eastern Chatham in 1922. Vying with the Golden Arrow for the title of the Southern's best-known train,